When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello, welcome to the Daily Red, your lunchtime catch-up on all things Liverpool FC on a Wednesday, where news is starting to come out. So we've had a report today that prior to the June 30th profit and sustainability deadline, there was a deal potentially agreed between Liverpool and Newcastle where Joe Gomez would go to Toon for 45 million and Antony Gordon would come to Liverpool for 75 million. Now, how much truth there is to that, how close it was to being done, I don't know. There's some suggestion in the Daily Mail that medicals were booked for the two players to take place in Leipzig. It would be unusual if Gareth Southgate was going to allow two players to go and get medicals done. But given neither of them were part of his kind of inner circle of players that he was going to use in the tournament, it is possible. The fact that it's taken a month or over a month for that to come out suggests that the local journalists have absolutely no idea what the club are doing. You look at the Endo deal, which we also had reported in recent days, and it seems that that one was also a late June, early July type of offer, and again took 3 to 4 weeks to come out. So it does just bear consideration when people read things that journalists have to say, that they only know what the club want them to know. They're only reporting what the club want them to report, and anything else is speculation. Now, obviously there's been an awful lot of soiled underpants over the last 6 weeks or so. But when you look at what Richard Hughes said when the introductory press conference for Arne took place, Hughes was pretty clear that August was sort of when business would take place. Arne has since said that it would be a major shock to everybody if we didn't buy anybody. And then you've also had, I can't think of the guy's first name, McAdam on Sky Sports, come out and say he guarantees Liverpool will buy players in this window. Now, he's known to be close to Richard Hughes. And when Hughes was at Bournemouth, he was often the one who broke a lot of the Bournemouth news. So you'd imagine that there's a relationship there, a close relationship there. So if he's saying that, and Arne is saying what he said, and then you factor what Hughes said, it does just make sense that we haven't done anything yet. Now, look, people will be upset by the fact that nothing has taken place yet. We haven't done the contract extensions. We haven't sold anybody. But these are very intelligent people who know what they're doing. And there was an awful lot to do this summer. Like, a lot had to take place before they could get properly mobilized in the transfer market. In all likelihood, they have considerable lists for every single position, not just the ones they're considering, but long-term future thinking as well. what happens in 2 years if Alexis wants to go? Who are the players that we could potentially target then? Not saying he will want to go, I'm just, using it as an example. In terms of the Virgil and Trent extensions, it does make sense that neither of them are done yet. Neither of them have returned to training. The manager hasn't spoken to either of them face-to-face yet. But I would be confident both of those deals will get done. I wasn't on Trent, I am now. I do worry a little bit about Mo, because Rennie's a pain in the arse to deal with. We all know that. And Mo is very expensive in terms of his wages. Now, is he worth them? Absolutely he is. He's worth what we've paid him and a lot more. I also think with Mo, forwards don't tend to maintain their level into their mid-30s, late 30s, whereas I think it's easier for centre-backs because there's less explosive actions required with centre-backs. It wouldn't surprise me if all three renewed. If they did 2 years on Virgil and Mo and maybe 4 on Trent or 3 on Trent, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I also don't think they're massively panicked because those contracts can be agreed during the season. Like, we don't have to have those deals done by September 1st. Yes, they can all start to, sign contracts with other clubs to move on frees in January. But at the same time, that does give us from September to January to work on deals. In terms of what we'll do with regards to incomings, like, it may well be that we've got agreements in place with multiple players. The journalists just won't know, because unless someone within the club tells them, and it's going to be a very tight group of people who know what they're doing, then it's not going to leak out. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we get a couple of Fabinho-type signings this summer, Szoboszlai-type signings this summer, where it breaks on like a Wednesday or Thursday that Liverpool have made an offer or are interested in said player, and by like the Saturday, he's signed, sealed and delivered. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Could even be quicker than that. Look at the Fabinho one. News came out that we were interested, and about 5 hours later, it was a done deal. And that was Edwards at his very apex. And it really wouldn't surprise me if something similar happened this summer. I think there's a reason they're acting the way they're acting. And as I've said before, like, there will be clubs later in the window that will want to sell players after they've done their business. And people always seem to forget that when we go to buy a player from another club, that's not the end of the chain of actions. That club also has to buy somebody to replace the player they're selling. So it may be, like Hughes mentioned, the Olympics, and you can go through the Olympic squads. There's not a ton of players at the 2024 Olympics that you would say would be massively interesting to Liverpool. But there may well be players that are interesting to the clubs Liverpool are looking to buy from. Like, if we look at the French squad, there's a bunch there that we would like, without question. Lukeba is the obvious one. I'd still take Manu Kone. Would have loved Elise, but such is life. There's a couple of others in that squad that would be of great interest to us. So you look at the clubs that they'd be coming from. Let's say Lukeba, for example. If we wanted to buy him, the player Leipzig might want to replace him, if they felt he was going to go, might be someone else playing at the Olympics. So that deal can't happen until after the Olympics. But even if it's a player we want, let's just say, because his name's been around, mostly because I've been hammering his name all summer, let's just say we want Varela. Okay, let's just say he's the one we want in that defensive midfield position. The player Porto might have targeted to replace him could well be Ezequiel Fernandez, who's at the Olympics. So Porto might not be willing to do that deal until after the Olympics, when they can secure Fernandez and also make sure he hasn't picked up a serious injury at this competition. So it's more than just a straightforward, well, we want this player, we should go and buy this player. There's a lot of things that fall into it. Does the selling club want to get their business done first so they don't get screwed on the prices? Are the selling club waiting for the player they want to become available? Because it could be a chain reaction of 4 and 5 and 6 moves. We want Varela, Porto want Ezequiel Fernandez, Boca want whoever to come in and replace Ezequiel, and whatever club they want to buy that player for is also going to want to buy a player to come in, unless they have someone in their academy. So this can just be a string of events that can take time, can be quite complex. I don't have any concerns at the moment. I really don't. I'm very happy to see the club operating as quietly as they have been. Now, if we get to the last 2 weeks of August, then I think that would be time for some concern. Because then you are getting very close to the deadline.
Driving plays a big part in driving the local economy. It helps us all get where we're going and creates good jobs close to home. At Synovus Energy, our refineries in Toledo and Lima are a reliable domestic source of gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. Plus, more than 2,300 employees and contractors work for us here in Ohio. See how we're helping local communities move forward at Synovus.com.
I know people are saying, oh, well, you know, our Premier League campaign is going to kick off in a couple of weeks and we're not going to have a player in. The first game for us is the 17th. That gives us 18 days from today. And that's fair. It absolutely is fair. But you also have to factor in, like, Virgil's not back yet. Trent's not back yet. Cody's not back yet. I think Gravenberch and Ibu came back yesterday. Those players are also not going to be in sync with the rest of the squad in terms of training time, in terms of having had that period to adapt to Arne Slot's system. So there's going to be a bedding in process for them as well. Like, it's not just about new signings, it's also the existing players. This is an awkward kind of run into a season for a lot of clubs, not just us. But I don't have any concerns right now. I think people just need to be patient. I think they need to realize that just because things were done a certain way doesn't mean they're always going to be done a certain way. The key phrases coming out have been things like opportunistic. And I think the Gordon thing is a prime example of that. Like, if you look at how Arne Slot used his wingers at Feyenoord, Antony Gordon's not a particularly good fit for how he used his wingers. He's not a great 1v1 dribbler. He's the type of player who knocks it past the fullback and sprints onto it. As a Klopp winger, he would have made a ton of sense because they're inside forwards. They play that much higher up. And when you watch him for Newcastle, he plays very high up. He's often their furthest man forward. He lives on the shoulder of the defender. And he's excellent in transition and running onto long balls over the top. They are not features of how Arne Slot plays. And his wide forwards are more traditional wingers. One is a 1v1 specialist and the other is more of a playmaker, which he isn't. So you could see Mo being the playmaker who can also obviously bring a ton of goals. But Diaz is a much better 1v1 winger than Antony Gordon. And I'm not just talking about simple stats that can be looked up, like dribbles completed and stuff like that. Like, if you knock a ball past someone and run quickly and get to the ball, you've completed a dribble. It doesn't mean you've actually done anything. you look at what Diaz does. Diaz draws multiple defenders every single time. And that's the type of thing that I think he's looking for. The wingers that Arne uses are very similar to, say, Solly March and Matoma at Brighton. And when you look at Matoma and what he does, how he occupies defenders, that's to create space for other players. That's the purpose of that. It's not necessarily that he's going to put up big numbers by himself. Now, Matoma has put up decent numbers. Minta put up decent numbers last year for Feyenoord. But the bigger thing they're doing is they're creating opportunities for others. They're creating space for others to play in. That's not really a strength of Antony Gordon. Under Klopp, Gordon would have made quite a lot of sense. You know, in that left-sided role, we'd always talked about needing a new Sadio, and Diaz was a big departure from Sadio. Diaz was a true winger, whereas Sadio was more of that natural inside forward player. Because he'd come through that Red Bull system, or he'd gone to Red Bull and played there for a number of years. And he played as like an interior in the two behind the front two, or in the front two. And when he went to Southampton and then when he joined us, he would play on the right, but he'd play real narrow. So moving him to the left, he was never a natural left winger. He wasn't looking to hold the touchline. He would drift wide to pick the ball up, to isolate people. But he was never the one that we played through on a consistent basis. Gordon would have made sense in that type of role. Like we had many times on social media, on podcasts and whatever else, talked about Martinelli and how he'd be a great fit under Klopp. And Gordon is a bit of a poor man's Martinelli. He's not quite as good as Martinelli as a finisher. I know he had better numbers last year, but look at Martinelli the year before. Was he 17 league goals, something like that? Martinelli's younger than him. I think he's got better movement than Gordon. But they are similar types of players. That would make sense under Klopp. I don't really see it making a ton of sense under Arne. He could alter things, of course he could. He could change how he uses wide players. But he's still not going to preach transition and long balls over the top. You'll get Trent playing the odd one. But it's not going to be as frequent as it is with Newcastle. Like, Newcastle live in transition. Their whole identity is chaos. Tons of turnovers in midfield, and then that first time ball away in behind the right back for Gordon to run onto. You've also got to factor in who Antony Gordon plays in that front three with at Newcastle. Isak drops off, links play, plays almost like a false nine. Darwin lives on the shoulder. So it's a very different fit. And then you've got the aspect of, at Newcastle, Isak is option one, Gordon is option two. At Liverpool, Mo is option one. Darwin's going to be option two. Gordon's the third one. So is he going to be as effective? Probably not. He's not going to have the same kind of opportunities. We're going to build a lot more through Mo than we are through that direct ball to Gordon. And one of the reasons Diaz becomes, I think, a better fit under Slot is that ability to come deep, receive the ball, carry the ball and attract multiple defenders before finding the pass. And then, because that second or third defender have come across to Diaz, there's going to be a free man somewhere else. And if we can find situations where we're isolating Darwin or Mo 1v1, that's going to be really valuable for us. Really, really valuable. So I have significant doubts over Gordon's suitability for Arne Slot's team. I also have significant doubts over him as a player. Like, we've seen one season of decent numbers. I know he He's one of a few to get 10 and 10 in the Premier League, and congrats to him for that. It's tremendous. But 11 goals is not really moving the needle a ton. I mean, Diaz got 8 and we slandered him for last season. I also think with Diaz, he was just being used wrong under Klopp. Like, I just don't think he's that inside forward type. I think he wants more space to play in. I think he wants to play that bit deeper, collect the ball and just run at people. When he was at Porto, he was putting up phenomenal numbers in that kind of position, and he was playing absolutely out of his mind. So I'd be more in favour of keeping him. If Gordon continues to improve, that deal is going to be, well, maybe not that deal, but there will be a deal there for him in the future if he continues to improve. But we don't know what his contract situation is. I've seen people continually rattle on about a contract that expires in 2026. Does anyone really believe Newcastle gave him a 3.5-year deal? There's no reporting that says that. None. No reporting from when he signed says they gave him a 3.5-year deal. That's just transfer market. And they're not reliable. Anybody can create an account. Anybody can become a contributor. So this idea that, oh, we wait a year, Gordon's price comes down, it might not. Newcastle right now are probably going to want 100 million for him. Now, much will depend on how he reacts to all of this. But you'd imagine that after this type of thing took place, Newcastle have sat down with him or spoken to him and had conversations with him. I wouldn't imagine it's been complete radio silence. And Eddie Howe has said he's staying, and the CEO has said he's staying. And he doesn't really have leverage to push his way out. He just doesn't. He did at Everton because it's Everton. He doesn't at Newcastle. Especially if he's got 3 or 4 years left on his current contract. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, if anything happens with that one. As far as Gomez goes, I've seen some people say, well, how will he react to this? If you remember back to May, Sam Maguire on Anfield Watch reported that Joe had suggested he would be open to leaving. He was one of a couple of players that were open to leaving. Caoimhín Kelleher was another. He's confirmed it, that he'd like to go somewhere and be a number one. Joe apparently just asked the club to consider offers for them if they were acceptable, that he'd like to go somewhere and play and be first choice, though the suggestion was it would be somewhere in the south, closer to home for him. But Newcastle's a huge club. He's not going to turn that down. I don't think Joe will be in any way put out by the fact that the club were open to selling him for 45 million. Like, let's be honest. As good as Joe is and as versatile as he is, his injury issues mean that his value is definitely diminished. So 45 million for Joe Gomez is a significant overpay based on the injury track record. As good as he is, I think if we get an offer of 30, 35, there's a chance we'll take it. I don't want to sell him. Not now. I'd rather leave centre-back another year and then go and address any issues there. I'd rather keep Joe and Seth. And then you've also got, obviously, Kwanzaa, Ibu, and Virgil. I'd rather keep that group. I'd rather keep our wide players the way they are. And just focus in on defensive midfield and left-back. Because I really do think if we nail defensive midfield and left-back, if we go and get Varela and Hincapié, Varela and Lukeba, I don't think this team is a million miles away from winning the title. I think the floor on this team remains third. Now, with a new manager, with a new style of play, there will be some hiccups. So if we ended up fourth, it wouldn't be the end of the world. It's the same outcome as finishing third. But I do think there's a world in which if we nail those two positions and those two players come in and adapt quickly, I think we'll see improvements across the board from a number of players. Darwin, Diaz, Gakpo, Szoboszlai, McAllister. I think they can all kick on. I think if we keep Ibu fit, that improves us hugely as well. I think if Trent is used the way he should be used, as more of a right back, I think that's going to improve him as well. Get him back to the player he was a few years ago. I think if Ali stays fit, that improves us. And we weren't a million miles away last year. I mean, look at the injuries we had and look at how many times we got screwed by horrendous refereeing decisions. We weren't a million miles away last year. I don't think we'll be a million miles away this year if we nail the two signings that we need. There's plenty of stuff to read on This is Anfield, Anfield Watch, Liverpool.com, and Dave O.C. Kopp. On AnfieldIndex.com, there is a piece on Arne Slot's fullback tactics. There is a piece on reports of a potential additional friendly to be played against Las Palmas, though likely that game will be behind closed doors. The Sky Sports journalist McAdams saying Liverpool will attack the market in August. And there's a match preview for the Arsenal game and how to watch and where to watch. Podcast-wise, there is a new Tad Predictable. There's a Positivity Ramble with Paul, Lubo and Matt, so check that out. And then there is a transfer podcast with Trev Downey and Dave Davis, so do give that a listen as well. And I will see you all tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.